So now we've had a look at the stills option. We've had a look at the physical location option. I think you could see it's significantly easier at the physical location. You've got a lot more choices. You got a lot more ways to make things look good, which can skew things in your favor. So definitely do the physical option if you can, especially with a director. Because if it's a newer director, even or someone that you've worked with a couple times, it is nice to stand in the spot without any of the pressure of any of the other crew around and no time pressure, and to just go through ideas. Just let them talk through their ideas. You talk through your ideas, what you think is going to look the best. And maybe you can come up with something that you can incorporate on the day that they hadn't thought of, or an angle, or a way to play the coverage, or even as simple as which side of the car they're going to stand on, or where the two people are going to stand when they're talking to each other. What's the best angle for the woman in the ad? What's the best angle for the guy? What's the best background? Can we cheat that somehow? Do we move to a different location for a background that is better? Those are the things you can find out if you're actually there on the day. Now, going forward, we've accumulated all this information. We've found out what we like the best. Now, how are we going to turn that into a story? And how are we going to do it quickly so that it actually makes a difference in deciding the final factor? Well, if we just look now for a minute at the agency boards, remember we looked at these before, these just give us a very basic, no location, rough guideline for what we need to look at. I would say there's no real big red flags here that jump out. Normally on location scouts, you're looking for the big red flags, the things that could really hose us on the day that we can't actually fix. So for example, shot number one, there's nothing there that we can't get. There's nothing there that's going to hold us back. There's no building right behind where we'd want to be standing that limits how far back we can get. There's nothing in the background that makes a big difference to the shot. This coverage is nice and easy. We've got more than enough room on the road to do that kind of shot of the tire. The singles we can shoot during the bad time of the day, and we know we can fill those in and use some overhead and use some diffusion to help create that shape. And there's nothing at the location that is limiting us on where we can put stands, or where we can put the overhead, or can we move the talent around. There's nothing like that. There's no red flags there. So I would say all good for all of the locations, for all of these things. This car inside the car shot, we still haven't talked about whether or not that's staying outside the car. We're just basically going over the storyboards and saying, okay, we remember everything. There's no red flags. We are good to go. Let's put forth our recommendation for why location number one is better than location number two, or option number one is better than option number two. I would say I would lead with the background. I would lead with there's more space. There's also another telephone pole in there that we can use to help to cover ourselves or to add some more depth to the frame, versus the other side. That cactus seems a little bit close to the road. There's not as much length of road. You can imagine if we were outside the 3D world, actually we should jump into it now. If we were outside of the world, let's jump in with our character here. You see, like this could be, if we fly away and fly down here, this could be, instead of just ending here where I just ended the map, it could turn off and there's not as much physical road here. So maybe we want more distance than option number two gives us. I mean, it is nice for the sun, but there's just more road here. You got more depth. You've got the two lights, street lamps that give us a little bit of depth, and we're really good from all angles, right? It feels like desert. It feels like it's out in the middle of nowhere. So those are the kind of stories that I would be weaving of, saying, okay, this really sells it. We've got more road. There's more stretch here. It feels more isolated, if that's something that you want to lean into. Say you talk with Andre, the director, and he says, I don't want it to be quite as desolate as they mention in the agency boards, or that we mentioned in the treatment. Maybe I want it to feel a little bit more built up. Well, then you start saying, okay, well, if we want it more built up, why don't we use this crossroad here, right? This intersection. We can use that because that feels more dense. We can use some cars in the foreground or passing by. Those are the things. Or we can look for buildings that might be further up this way or further up that way. You're just constantly taking those little tiny clues and those little tiny slips in to try and figure out what it is someone is after. So from there, I would say, yes, definitely the direction of the sun works perfectly. We'll be able to shoot that style that we found in the treatment. We'll be able to do all of those things. We've got enough room on the road to put up the neg, to put up the diffusion. There's no limits, right? There's no power out there, but we're gonna bring in our own generator if we need to on something like this, day exterior, and with how fast we're gonna be moving, and that we found a location where we can aim north with most of the action. We know we're not probably gonna have to use lights. So we can save some money there. If that question comes up, do we need lights? Well, we look at the schedule. We look at, is it going to be overcast? Is it going to be clear? If it's going to be clear, and we're going to use bounce and neg for all of our lighting options, then we probably won't need a generator, which can then free up money to go somewhere else, to a better car or more talent or whatever it is. You're just trying to free up that money as quick as you can in the process so that it can get allocated somewhere where it can be more beneficial. So I would lead with the look. There's no problems from the sun or the angles like that, and try and sell to the director and the producer. They're both going to want different reasons. The director is going to want to hear why this location is going to make it better than maybe he prefers option 2. And then you say, well, from a practical standpoint, there's just not enough room to fit the 2 cars in location number 2 without seeing the intersection, without seeing that road. So maybe you go that angle. With somebody, maybe the agency and the client, maybe they love option 3. And now you have to go in there and say, okay, option 3 is not going to work for any of the shots. Okay, it might work in the morning, but it's going to look so bad in the afternoon that we can't recover from it. Now maybe we can shoot 2 mornings instead of the 1 day, but that's going to cost production a whole lot more. So you just lead with solutions. You lead with, yeah, we can do it. We can definitely shoot option number 3, but it's going to have to be split because there's no solution. Like, it doesn't matter how many lights you bring. We're never going to be able to overpower what the sun is doing out there on a clear day. So just forget about doing it in a single day there. It just makes our life so much more difficult. Option 2, again, it's a little bit narrower. Option 1 seems to be the way to go unless something comes back. So I bashed together a quick little email. I always like to inform the director of the choice that I would put forward first before I move on to the production, because you're really on the director's side mostly. Unless it's a producer that you work with quite a bit and it's a newer director to them. They might not know the budget level. They might not know the way the producer works. So I would say, I always put in a call to the director and say, hey, this is what I'm thinking. If they're not out there on the scout with me, which again is another selling point for bringing the director with you, spending as much time with them as you can in the pre-production process, because you can have these conversations on the way back in the car, and they're just priceless to what they can do and how they can speed things up on the day and in the selling process in pre-production. So put in a little call. Hey, I'm thinking option number 1. What do you think? Listen if they have any concerns, and then you mitigate those concerns as quick as you can. And maybe they're legitimate. And you have to say, okay, well, it's got to be option 2, or it's got to be option 3, or whatever it is. But I would say put in a call, then put together an email just listing some of the selling points and offering those selling points. Not just saying, hey, production company, I choose option 1 first, option 2 second, option 3 third. I mean, that does get the point across. If things are really busy and they have to get this turned around right away, that works. But I would fill it in with a little bit more story onto why you chose this. Because maybe they tally up all those preferences and the production designer says, oh, we really like option 3. Well, if you both just really like them, maybe they take them as equal value. But if you say option 3 is an absolute no-go, and here's why, blah, 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 sun, angle, not going to work, must shoot 2 days. Well, then they're not going to take that's going to take precedent over the production designer liking a cactus in the background or something like that. So lead with story and be quick as you can to get it done.